At the funeral of my husband Arthur, the scent of flowers mingled with the bitter taste of humiliation, a quiet strength stirring deep inside me. Our living room, usually so filled with laughter and the hum of everyday life, was now packed with faces I barely recognized, all whispering, all murmuring condolences. But it wasn't my grief that felt most pressing. It was the way my own son, David, and his wife, Bethany, moved through the crowd, acting like hosts, like owners. They took every hand, accepted every sympathetic nod. David, my eldest, the boy I raised, spoke of Arthur, of our life, as if I wasn't even there. Bethany, with her polished smile, directed people to the coffee, to the restrooms, even decided where the floral arrangements should go. It was all so organized, so efficient, and so completely done without me. I was led, gently but firmly, to an armchair in the corner. Not the comfortable armchair Arthur and I shared, but an old, stiff one. My life, the one Arthur and I had built together for 50 beautiful years, was being reorganized, reshaped, right before my eyes. And no one, not David, not Bethany, not any of the kind, pitying faces, even thought to ask for my permission. The pain of losing Arthur was immense, a raw, gaping wound in my heart. Every breath felt like a struggle without him here. But layered over that grief, a different kind of pain began to bloom. It was the pain of being erased, of being dismissed by my own son. It felt like a slow, deep stab, twisting with every passing moment. I saw the glances. They were fleeting, but I caught them. Neighbors, friends of Arthur's, people who had known me for decades. Their eyes held pity, yes, but also something else. Something in the way my daughter-in-law, Bethany, would lean close to someone, whisper something into their ear, and then they would look at me. Those whispers, I could almost hear them. They said the same thing without a single sound. That I was fragile. That I was incapable. Just an old woman who now depended entirely on their good graces. They saw me as a burden, a piece of furniture to be moved wherever they saw fit. It was a silent humiliation, constant and cutting. The emotional coldness from my own family was a heavy blanket, suffocating me in my own home. They treated me as if my voice no longer mattered, as if my feelings were secondary to their plans. The distance they created felt like an invisible wall, growing taller and wider with every minute of that long, agonizing day. I could feel the rejection in every averted gaze, every hurried conversation that stopped when I looked their way. But among the tears I held back, among the deep breaths, he knew the true heart of each of our children better than anyone. And before he left, he prepared a final lesson, the lesson about respect, about dignity. They thought the game was won. They thought all the power, all the control was theirs for the taking. But little did they know that the final match hadn't even been played yet. And the most important piece, the one that truly mattered, that piece was still very much in my hands. That piece, that secret, was all that kept me anchored in that moment. My name is Eleanor. I am 76 years old. 76 years. It sounds like a lot, doesn't it? But it feels like yesterday I was a young woman, fresh out of college, ready to change the world. I was a teacher, my entire life. I taught hundreds of children to read and write. Little hands, eager minds. That was my world for decades. I poured my heart into it. And when I wasn't in the classroom, my heart was here with Arthur. My life with Arthur was simple. We weren't rich, not in money anyway, but it was full of love and so much hard work. We built this house, brick by brick, with our own hands. Can you believe that? This whole place. We bought this plot of land when it was just an empty field, nothing but weeds and dreams. Every brick has a story. Every single room holds a memory. Our savings, our sweat, every bit of it is steeped in these walls. This isn't just a house to me. It's our life, all of it. Our legacy. I was always an active woman. I loved taking care of my home. My garden, it's my sanctuary. And especially my family. Arthur, my dear Arthur, he always understood how much this place meant to me. He used to say this house was my fortress, my safe place. I remember it so clearly. Just a few months before he fell ill, before everything changed, we were sitting out on the porch. The sun was setting, painting the sky in colors I can still see now. He held my hand. His grip was strong. Even then, "Eleanor," he said, his eyes looking out at the fields we'd worked so hard on. "This place is yours. It's your security, your safe harbor. Promise me you'll never let anyone take that from you." He said it with such seriousness. I remember looking at his eyes. They held a weight I didn't understand then. At the time, I just thought it was another beautiful declaration of love, like so many others we exchanged over the years. Just Arthur, being Arthur, always looking out for me. I truly believed I had built a solid family, a family with children who would honor our memory, honor each other. Our eldest, David, he was always more ambitious, always reaching for more. And his wife, Bethany, she was even more so. She had a way of looking at things, of sizing them up. Then there's Matthew, our youngest. He lives far away now, in Denver. He's different. More like me, I think. Quieter, more observant. He always seemed to notice the small things. I thought love would be enough. I truly did. I thought our love, the foundation we laid, would be enough to keep us all together, connected. I believed in that with all my heart. But what I didn't know yet, what was slowly, painfully revealing itself, was that for some people, for some, love has a price and an expiration date. Arthur's illness. That's where it all really began, It wasn't like a sudden storm, more like a slow, creeping fog that just settled over everything. He started feeling tired, then weaker, and before we knew it, doctor's appointments became our whole world. And with those appointments, David and Bethany started to appear more often. At first, I was grateful. Concerned children, that's what I thought. But gradually, subtly, they began making decisions without even looking at me. They'd talk about the costs of his treatment, about Arthur's old business documents, about our savings, always in a tone that just excluded me, as if I were a child who couldn't possibly understand serious matters. "Leave it to us, Mom," "You need to rest," they would say. And they'd give me a smile, but it never quite reached their eyes. It was a polite, distant smile. A smile that said, "We've got this, so you don't have to worry your pretty little head." I tried to offer my opinion. I'd suggest something, maybe a different doctor, or a new approach to some paperwork. I'd spent my life managing our household, handling everything with Arthur. But my words just seemed to bounce off a silent, invisible shield. I was always met with the same polite dismissiveness. "Oh, yes, yes, we'll see about that later, Mom." Promises of conversations that never happened. Documents that would just disappear from Arthur's desk. Papers I knew he kept there. Or I'd walk into a room and their hushed conversations would just stop, dead. They'd clear their throats, change the subject, suddenly talk about the weather or how tired they were. Their coldness, it wasn't loud or obvious. It was subtle, like a chill that slowly seeped into your bones. But it was constant. Every day, I felt a little bit more like a stranger in my own home, a visitor whose presence was merely tolerated. I'd try to tell myself, "No, Eleanor, it's just their concern for Arthur. They're worried, just like you are. That's why they're acting this way." It made sense, didn't it? When someone you love is hurting, you do strange things. I tried to get closer to them, to offer help, a shoulder to lean on, just like I had always done for them when they were little. When David scraped his knee, or Matthew had a bad day at school, I was always there. But now, it was like they had already built a wall between us. A wall made of excuses, vague answers, and those evasive looks that never quite met my eyes. And there was this inexplicable rush to resolve things that didn't yet need to be resolved. Arthur was still here, still fighting, but they were already talking about his affairs, as if he were gone. It was like they were in a race against time, but not for his recovery, for something else. It was the beginning of my solitude, a deep, quiet solitude that settled right into my heart, and it hurt. It hurt more than any illness, more than any physical pain I'd ever known. To feel so utterly alone in your own home, surrounded by your own family. It was a pain I never, ever thought I'd experience. And it was just starting. The solitude I felt, that deep. Quiet solitude in my own home. It only intensified on the day of Arthur's funeral. That day wasn't about mourning for them. It was the main stage, the public arena for their cruelty. Our living room, usually a place of comfort, was overflowing with people. But it felt less like a gathering of mourners and more like a carefully orchestrated performance. While I was still reeling, still paralyzed by a grief so profound it stole my breath, Bethany moved with an efficiency that chilled me to the bone. She was everywhere, directing, instructing, talking. She acted like someone taking possession of a property, not like a grieving daughter-in-law. She introduced me to others, always with a sympathetic tilt of her head, a hushed tone. "This is poor little Mom," she'd say, her voice dripping with false concern, "who will now need all our care." It was like a label, stitched onto my chest for everyone to see. Poor, little, needing care. It stripped me of everything, and David, my son, the boy I breastfed, the child I held in my arms. who called me mommy. He barely looked me in the eyes. He was too busy, shaking hands, accepting condolences with a solemn nod, acting like the new head of the family, the man in charge. He moved through the crowd, a king surveying his new kingdom, while I, his own mother, sat in a corner, forgotten. The hardest moment, the one that truly twisted the knife, came later. My grandson, Liam, he's 15 years old now. He's a good boy, a quiet boy. I saw him weaving through the legs, making his way toward me, his young face etched with sorrow. He just wanted to hug me, I know it. He reached out, his hand tentatively touching my arm. And then Bethany was there, suddenly, swiftly, like a shadow. She intercepted him, putting a hand on his shoulder, drawing him back. "Leave Grandma be, son," she said, her voice loud enough for a few people nearby to hear. A stage whisper. "She's very upset and confused." Confused. The word hung in the air like a poisoned dart. She said it aloud, for everyone to hear, not just for Liam, but for all the curious ears. She was publicly declaring me senile, incapable, my mind, my judgment, my very being dismissed in one cruel word. I felt the pitying stares fixed on me then. Not stares of shared grief, but stares of judgment, of silent condemnation. I wasn't just grieving for Arthur. I was being put on trial, found guilty of being old and useless, right there in my own home, in that crowded room, with all those people. I had never, not once, in my 76 years, felt so utterly invisible. They didn't just take away my right to mourn my husband. They took away my right to be Arthur's widow, the matriarch of this family, the woman who had built this life alongside him. That day, in my own home, the house Arthur and I built with our bare hands, they reduced me to the status of a problem to be managed, an inconvenience. And the pain of that humiliation, that quiet, searing public shame, it was so great, so overwhelming. For a moment, it dried my tears. My grief for Arthur was still there, a deep ache, but it was overshadowed, suffocated by the burning injustice. I just sat there, quiet, numb, the tears refusing to fall, replaced by a cold, hard resolve I didn't know I had. The pain of that humiliation, that quiet, searing public shame, it was so great, so overwhelming. For a moment, it dried my tears. My grief for Arthur was still there, a deep ache, but it was overshadowed, suffocated by the burning injustice. I just sat there, quiet, numb, the tears refusing to fall, replaced by a cold, hard resolve I didn't know I had. Instead of crying or screaming, instead of making a scene, a different kind of feeling came over me. A coldness, yes, but not of despair. It was like a clear, sharp morning after a storm. I just sat there, in that stiff armchair where they had placed me, hidden mostly by the fern, and I just observed. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I simply watched. From my quiet corner, I saw things. Things they thought I wouldn't notice or wouldn't understand. I saw Bethany, my daughter-in-law, leaning close to a woman I recognized as Sarah, who used to work for a local real estate agency. Bethany was talking to her, whispering, but her gestures were clear, was pretending to be a family friend, offering condolences. But her eyes, like Bethany's, were too sharp, too calculating. I saw a quick, shared glance between them, a look that spoke of numbers and plans, not of comfort. And then there was David, my own son. He was over near the dining room entrance, with his sister, my daughter. She had come down from Ohio, looking tired and drawn, but even she seemed to be falling in line with David and Bethany's agenda. I watched as David spoke, his voice low, but every now and then a word would float to me, carried on the air. "Need to sell everything," he murmured. "Divide it quickly." And his sister nodded, almost defeated. They weren't even trying to hide it. Not from me, not from anyone. Their greed, it was right there, out in the open, dressed up in black funeral clothes. They truly believed I no longer had a voice, that I had no power to stop them. They thought I was just a sad, confused old woman, ready to be managed. But as I watched them, as their words and actions washed over me, something else began to surface. A memory. It came back to me with crystalline clarity, sharp and real, like it had just happened yesterday. It was the memory of my conversation with Arthur on the porch, the one from just months before he got sick, when he held my hand and told me this house was my fortress, my safe harbor. That moment, those words, they suddenly clicked into place with a deeper meaning. It wasn't just a declaration of love, not just a sweet sentiment. It was a promise, a preparation. And then another memory followed, right on its heels. The day we went to the lawyer's office, just the two of us. It was a few weeks after that porch conversation. Arthur had said it was to sort out some papers for the future. His eyes twinkling, a little secret smile on his lips. I hadn't paid much attention then. Arthur handled all the legal stuff, always had. He just gave my hand a squeeze and told me, "Trust me, Eleanor, I will always take care of you, even when I'm no longer here." I remembered the scent of the lawyer's office, the quiet rustle of papers, Arthur's calm presence beside me. I remembered thinking it was just Arthur being Arthur, always so thoughtful. But now, sitting in that armchair, surrounded by their calculating whispers, that memory wasn't just a memory. It was my shield. It was my secret. They underestimated me. Oh, how they underestimated me. They forgot who I was. They forgot that for 50 years, I was the one who managed the finances of this house. Not Arthur, me. I paid every bill, balanced every ledger, made every penny stretch. They forgot that I was the one who read every contract for Arthur's small workshop, every important document that came through this house. I was the one who spotted the tricky clauses, who made sure we weren't being taken advantage of. They saw a sad, grieving old woman, frail, helpless. But inside, a different kind of strength was rising, a quiet, knowing strength. I was just waiting for the right moment. The pain of losing Arthur, the searing humiliation of that day, it hadn't broken me. No, it had done something else entirely. It had given me the necessary silence, the quiet space I needed to plan, to breathe, to wait. It was time for my next move. The funeral passed, the house emptied, save for me and David and Bethany, who seemed to have taken up permanent residence. Their presence wasn't comforting. It was a suffocating weight. The days that followed the funeral, they weren't peaceful. They were a slow, relentless tightening of the noose. The pressure, it just escalated. Every morning brought a new layer of their carefully constructed plan. One afternoon, David sat with me at the kitchen table. He moved a cup of tea closer to me, his hands precise, his expression carefully molded into one of deep concern. The kind of concern that feels utterly false. "Mom," he began, his voice soft, almost a whisper, "we've been doing some looking around." He paused, letting the words hang in the air, creating a dramatic space for what was coming. "We've found a great place for you, a retirement community, with other people your age, nurses right there, 24-hour care. You wouldn't have to worry about a thing." He talked about it as if it were a luxury cruise, not a place to be sent away. "This house," he continued, glancing around our kitchen, the kitchen Arthur and I had shared for decades, "it's just too big for you to be alone. It's dangerous, Mom. You could fall, or forget something on the stove." His words were like little jabs, reminding me of my age, my supposed frailty. Bethany, ever the accomplice, walked in then, carrying a stack of glossy brochures. She chimed in, her voice light, almost cheerful. "It would be such a relief, Mom, for us to know you were safe. It's for your own good, truly." Her eyes, though, were calculating, already seeing me out the door. They were so convinced, so sure they had won. I just listened. I kept my face neutral, gave them nothing. My pain, my anger, my mounting resolve, I kept it all carefully tucked away. I looked at the brochures they pushed across the table. Pictures of smiling elderly people playing board games, manicured gardens, nurses in crisp white uniforms. It felt like they were trying to sell me a future I didn't want, a future where I was neatly packaged away, out of sight, out of mind, out of their way. Then a lifeline. My youngest son, Matthew. He called from Denver. He must have sensed something. My voice, I suppose. I tried to sound normal, but the strain, the quiet despair I'd been living with, must have seeped through. When he asked how I was, I didn't lie, not exactly. I just told him vaguely, carefully, about David and Bethany's plans, about the great place they had found. There was a silence on the line. Then, his voice, clear and strong, cut through the fog that had been suffocating me. "Mom, don't sign anything," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Don't decide anything. I'm catching the first flight there. Dad's will reading is next week, right? Let's wait. Let's do nothing until then." His voice, it was like a glass of water in the desert. Cool, refreshing, life-giving. A sudden surge of hope, a tiny flicker of light in the growing darkness. Matthew. He understood. He saw. But the week leading up to the will reading, it was hell. David and Bethany called me every single day. Relentless. Insisting. "Matthew doesn't understand the reality, Mom," David would say, his voice laced with patronizing pity. "He's so far away. He doesn't see how much help you need." Bethany would echo him, always with that sweet, sickening smile. We only want your well-being, Mom. We just want to make sure you're taken care of. They even brought more brochures, different ones, leaving them on the coffee table, open to pages, showing communal dining rooms and smiling caregivers. A constant, visual reminder of their intentions. I felt cornered, trapped. The walls of my own home, the home Arthur and I had built, seemed to press in on me. It felt as if they were trying to bury me alive, to erase me not just from my house, but from my very life. Their arrogance grew with each passing day. They spoke in front of me as if I were already gone, discussing what they would do with the property once I was settled. They talked about renovations, about modernizing the kitchen, about selling off Arthur's tools, as if his workshop, his sanctuary, was already theirs to dismantle. But despite the suffocating pressure, despite the constant bombardment of their plans for my disappearance, I held firm. The promise of Matthew's arrival, the memory of Arthur's steady hand, his quiet words, "Trust me, Eleanor. I will always take care of you, even when I'm no longer here." That memory was my anchor, my shield. I kept it close, a secret fire burning low in my chest. I just waited for Matthew, for the moment of truth. The climax was coming. I could feel it, and I was ready. I just waited for Matthew, for the moment of truth. The climax was coming. I could feel it, and I was ready. The day of the will reading arrived. It felt less like a solemn legal proceeding and more like a theatrical performance, one where I was supposed to be a silent prop. The meeting took place right here, in the living room of my house, the very same room where I had been humiliated just days earlier, where I'd sat silently, listening to their whispers and plans. This time, the seating arrangements were telling. David and Bethany had claimed the main sofa, right in the center of the room. They looked comfortable, confident, acting as if they were the hosts, the rightful inheritors, the new heads of the family. Matthew and I sat in the armchairs, off to the side, in silence, like observers, like outsiders. The lawyer, a serious man named Mr. Henderson, a longtime friend of Arthur's, sat at our old oak desk. He opened his leather folder, the rustle of papers, the only sound in the tense room. He cleared his throat, a small, deliberate sound. He began to read. He started with the bank savings, the various accounts Arthur had. These, he read, would be divided equally among the children. David, my eldest, leaned back on the sofa, a small, satisfied smile playing on his lips. Bethany nudged him subtly, a quick, shared glance of triumph. Everything was going exactly as they planned. They looked so smug, so sure of their victory. Then Mr. Henderson paused. He took a sip of water, his gaze sweeping over each of us before settling on the document in his hands. He cleared his throat again, a little louder this time. He looked directly at David and Bethany for a moment, then at Matthew and finally at me. Regarding the primary asset, he began, his voice slow and deliberate, the property located at this address. The family home. Bethany shifted on the sofa, anxious. Her eyes, usually so composed, darted to David, then back to the lawyer. You could feel the anticipation in the air. This was it. The big one. The house. Mr. Arthur Campbell, in full possession of his mental faculties, on the 25th of July, just 3 months before his illness. He paused again, letting the words sink in. He left a final specific clause. He leaves this house, with everything inside, as the sole and exclusive property of his wife, Eleanor. The deed, he added, almost as an afterthought, is already registered in her name. It was done months ago. The silence that followed was absolute. It hung heavy in the air, thick and suffocating. David, who had been leaning back so confidently, went utterly pale. His face drained of all color, leaving him looking like a ghost. He looked at me, then at the lawyer, then back at me, as if he couldn't believe what he had just heard. His jaw hung slightly open. Bethany, however, was not silent. She shot up from the sofa, a sharp, sudden movement that made everyone jump. "That's absurd!" she shrieked, her voice shrill, cracking with disbelief and fury. "He couldn't have done that. She manipulated him. That old woman manipulated him." Her face was contorted, ugly with rage. That's when I, Eleanor, with all the calmness in the world, slowly, deliberately, stood up from my armchair. My legs, which had felt so fragile just days before, now felt steady, rooted. I looked at Bethany, then at David, whose eyes were wide with a mix of shock and dawning horror. "He wasn't manipulated," I said, my voice quiet but firm, carrying clearly through the stunned room. Every word was precise, unhurried. "He simply knew that the only asset that matters at the end of life is dignity. And this house, where you humiliated me, where you tried to erase me, this house is my dignity." The shock on their faces wasn't sadness. It was something far deeper, far more devastating for them. It was total, utter defeat. Their carefully constructed plans, their polite cruelty, their greed, it all crumbled in that one moment. Justice, true justice, made no noise. It simply presented itself. It was right there, undeniable, in the lawyer's calm voice, in their stunned silence, and in the sudden, unbreakable peace that settled deep inside my own heart. The game, as they thought, had just ended, but not in the way they expected. Not at all. The silence in the living room after those words was thick, almost suffocating. David and Bethany didn't say another word. Not a protest, not an apology, nothing. A mask of concern, of false sympathy. It had fallen completely, exposing only raw shame and a biting, bitter greed. They just stood there for a moment, defeated, then turned and walked out of my house. The front door closed with a quiet click, but in my ears, it sounded like a thunderclap. They left, taking their carefully laid plans and their empty promises with them. And honestly, it felt like a breath of fresh air. Matthew stayed with me. He didn't ask, he just stayed. For a few more weeks, he was here, a quiet, steady presence. He didn't try to fill the void Arthur left. No one could, but he helped me. not just with the house, getting things organized after the funeral chaos, but with my heart too. He listened. He understood. He helped me begin to put things back in order, one quiet conversation at a time. It was a slow process, like healing a deep bruise, but his presence was a balm. The very next day after the will reading, my grandson Liam came to see me. He came alone, which was a surprise. He walked into the living room, looking so small and vulnerable, even at 15. His eyes were red, and he didn't say anything at first, just stood there. Then, he just crumpled, tears streaming down his face. He cried. He apologized. "Grandma, I'm so sorry," he choked out, his voice thick with tears. "I didn't know. I heard them. I'm so sorry." And he hugged me. It was the most sincere hug I had ever received, full of a boy's regret and confusion. I held him tight. I forgave him, of course. How could I not? He was just a boy, caught in the middle, repeating what he heard from his parents. He hadn't truly understood the depth of their actions. He was a good boy, still. I didn't cut David out of my life, because a mother doesn't do that. You don't just erase your child. But the visits, they became rare and formal. There were no more casual drop-ins, no more easy conversations about the day. It was stiff, polite, and brief. The intimacy we once had, the trust, that was broken forever. It was a wound that wouldn't truly heal, a chasm that had opened between us. It saddened me, but I knew deep down it was necessary. I had to protect my peace. So I remained in my home, in my corner of the world. But now it was different. There was a peace, a quiet calm that I hadn't felt in a very, very long time. The weight had lifted. I went back to tending my garden, my hands in the rich soil, feeling the sun on my face. It was my sanctuary again, full of life and color. I chatted with my neighbors over the fence, the old, familiar rhythm of our days returning. And Matthew, he still visited often, and Liam, my dear grandson, he came on weekends. Sometimes we would just sit on the porch, watching the sunset, just like Arthur and I used to. Other times, Liam would help me in the garden, and we'd talk about anything and everything. It felt good. It felt right. My routine from the outside didn't change much. I still woke up early, still had my cup of tea on the porch. But inside, I was a different woman. The fragility they had tried so hard to impose on me, the image of poor little Lam, it had dissolved. In its place, a serene strength had blossomed. I was no longer a burden. I was no longer invisible. I was Eleanor. The owner of my home, yes, but more importantly, the owner of my history and the owner of my future. And that sense of peace, that deep, unshakable calm, knowing that I was truly safe in my own skin, in my own home, that was the greatest inheritance Arthur could have ever left me. He took care of me just like he promised. Even when he was no longer here, he took care of me just like he promised. Even when he was no longer here. And that sense of peace, that deep, unshakable calm, knowing that I was truly safe in my own skin, in my own home, That was the greatest inheritance Arthur could have ever left me. But after all that happened, after the quiet storm had passed and the new calm settled, I started to think, really think. It wasn't just about Arthur's will, or the house, or even David and Bethany's greed. It was about something much, much bigger. Something that had been there, lurking, even before Arthur got sick. It was about how we see each other, how we treat each other. How, sometimes, the people closest to us can forget who we are, or worse, decide for us who we should be. I remember sitting in that armchair at the funeral, feeling like a ghost in my own living room. They saw me as fragile, incapable, a burden, an old woman whose time had passed, ready to be moved aside. They thought they knew best. For my own good, they said. It was always for my own good. But what they really meant was, it was for their good, for their convenience, for their plans. They stripped me of my dignity, piece by piece, with every dismissive glance, every hushed whisper, every brochure for a retirement home. They took away my voice, my right to grieve as a wife, my place as the matriarch. They tried to make me small, to make me disappear. And for a while, I almost did. The pain of losing Arthur was immense, but the pain of being erased by my own children, that was a different kind of wound. It made me feel like all the years, all the love, all the hard work I had put into this family, into this home, into my own life, it meant nothing. Like I was suddenly a blank page, waiting for someone else to write my ending. It was a cold, lonely feeling. It made me understand, truly understand, what it feels like to be overlooked, dismissed, simply because of your age. To be seen as a problem to be managed, instead of a person with a lifetime of experience, feelings, and still a future. But what they didn't count on was Arthur. And what they didn't count on was the strength that can bloom in the quietest of places, even when you feel most vulnerable. Arthur had given me a secret weapon, knowledge, the truth. And that truth, that quiet understanding of what was truly mine, allowed me to stand firm. It allowed me to find my voice again, not by shouting, but by simply being present, by simply being Eleanor. It allowed me to reclaim my dignity, not just in their eyes, but in my own. It taught me that dignity isn't something someone else gives you. It's not a gift that can be taken away. It's something you carry inside you, a quiet flame that you must protect, no matter how hard others try to blow it out. It's the deep knowing of your own worth, independent of what others think or say about you. It's the realization that your story, your life, is yours and yours alone, and no one has the right to rewrite it or erase you from it. And that made me wonder about you. Have you ever been made to feel invisible within your own story? Have they tried to erase your voice and your memories, saying it was for your own good? Remember that your dignity isn't for sale and has no expiration date. It's the only thing no one can take from you, unless you allow them to. It's a lesson that runs deeper than any inheritance. It's about respect, not just for the elderly, but for every person at every stage of their life. For their experiences, their wisdom, their continued right to make their own choices, to own their own lives. It's about seeing the person, truly seeing them, beyond labels, beyond age, beyond perceived frailties. It's about remembering that every life has value, every voice deserves to be heard, and every human being deserves to be treated with honor. My life, on the surface, returned to its quiet rhythm, but inside, I carry a different kind of peace now, a peace that was forged in pain, but strengthened by truth. It's a peace born from standing firm, from reclaiming what was always mine. And it's a peace that tells me every single day that Arthur, even without saying a word, taught me the most profound lesson of all. He showed me how to protect my spirit, how to stand tall, even when the world tries to push you down. And that, I've realized, is a journey that never truly ends. And that, I've realized, is a journey that never truly ends. It's a journey of finding your way back to yourself after you thought you were lost. A journey of remembering what truly matters and who you really are deep down. It's a path that unfolds day by day, moment by moment, teaching you that even after the stormiest weather, there's always a calm to be found. After everything, after the lawyers and the shouting and the quiet, heavy shame, I find such profound peace in the simple, quiet moments now. The morning sun on my face as I sip my tea on the porch, a little warmth spreading through me. The gentle hum of the old refrigerator in the kitchen, a comforting, familiar sound. The familiar creak of the floorboards under my feet as I walk through the rooms of the... There's a lightness in my step now, a calm in my heart I haven't felt in years, maybe decades. It's not just that the house is legally, safely mine. That's a wonderful relief, yes. But it's more than that. It's that I am mine again. My thoughts, my feelings, my memories, they belong to me, not to anyone else's judgment or plans. The sharp edges of anger, the bitter taste of betrayal, they're not completely gone, perhaps, a faint echo sometimes, but they faded, replaced by something much softer, much deeper, a quiet knowing, a sense of being whole again, completely and utterly myself. Arthur gave me back my fortress, this physical house, yes. But in doing so, he reminded me that the real, unbreakable fortress was always inside me. It was the resilience I didn't even know I had, the spirit that simply wouldn't break, even when others tried so hard to diminish it, to erase it. It's incredible, truly, the strength you can find when you have to. When you realize that your dignity isn't a fragile thing that can be taken or given away, but a sturdy, unshakable part of who you are, something you carry within your very soul. My days have returned to their simple, cherished rhythm. The garden calls to me every morning, and my hands find such comfort in the soil, digging, planting new life, nurturing what's already there. The roses, the ones Arthur planted for me years ago, they seem to bloom brighter now, their scent sweeter than ever. And the tomatoes I grow, somehow, they taste more vibrant, more alive. I chat with Mrs. Gable over the fence, just like always, sharing recipes and stories of our grandchildren, exchanging tea. She knows. She understands, quietly, without needing many words. It's good to have someone who truly sees you, without judgment, without any hidden agenda. Matthew visits often, of course, bringing his quiet strength and his steady presence. We talk for hours, just like old times. Or sometimes we just sit in companionable silence, reading our books, enjoying each other's company. And Liam, my dear grandson, he still comes every weekend, just like he promised. We sit on the porch, sometimes just watching the clouds drift by, sometimes talking about his school, his dreams, his young life unfolding. He's a good boy, a kind boy, and I know he's learning from all of this. Learning that true family isn't just about blood or what you can gain, but about respect and kindness and not letting anyone dim your light or the light of those you love. This whole journey, this winding path, it's taught me that life keeps teaching us every single day, no matter our age. And sometimes sharing these real, honest stories from one heart to another is the most powerful thing we can do. It reminds us that we're not alone in our own struggles, that there's strength to be found even in the quietest, most vulnerable moments. It connects us, human to human, in a way that truly matters, reminding us that we're all navigating our own paths, looking for a little peace. So, if you want to keep receiving real stories like this, if these quiet moments of truth resonate with you, then please pay attention. YouTube may be unsubscribing you without warning. Confirm you're still subscribed to the channel and hit the bell. It helps us stay connected, doesn't it? To keep sharing these moments of understanding, these lessons that life offers, these little whispers of resilience from one soul to another. Because in the end, we all need those gentle reminders that our spirit, our true,